She was just a night shift nurse in a quiet rural clinic, until she threw herself between a bullet and a bleeding stranger. No one believed her, but when her friends started digging, they uncovered a hidden world of veterans, secret convoys, and a code of honor few outsiders ever witness. Why did 12 silent men appear outside her hospital room? This is the story they tried to erase, but couldn't. The fluorescent lights of the rural clinic flickered overhead as Teresa Williams clocked out, rubbing the back of her neck and waving goodnight to the receptionist half asleep behind the desk. It was nearly 2 a.m., and the silence beyond the parking lot felt thick, like the world was holding its breath. Teresa, 28, had grown used to the stillness of these late hours. The clinic, tucked behind a truck stop on a lonely stretch of highway, didn't see much action beyond scrapes, fevers, or the occasional banged-up driver looking for a quick checkup before the next load. She tossed her jacket over her scrubs, pulled her hood up against the creeping fog, and stepped into the chilly night. Her old Corolla sat waiting at the far end of the lot, and just past that, the back road she took every night, cutting behind a string of old warehouses to shave 10 minutes off her commute. The area had a reputation. Dim lights, bad cell service, a place folks said truckers used to unload things that didn't always show up on manifests. But Teresa wasn't the type to scare easily. She was tired, and she had a cat to feed. The gravel crunched beneath her sneakers as she walked briskly along the edge of the lot and onto the cracked, narrow road. The warehouses loomed to her left, silhouettes swallowed by the fog. Her breath fogged in the air, mingling with the distant hum of a semi idling far away. Then a sound. A thud, a sharp grunt, and the clatter of something metal striking the ground. Teresa stopped. Her hand went instinctively to her pocket, gripping her phone. She squinted toward the alley between two warehouses. The fog swirled and parted just enough to reveal a man stumbling out from the shadows. He collapsed face first near the edge of the pavement, his body limp. Teresa froze for a heartbeat, then ran. "Sir?" "Hey!" she called, dropping to her knees beside him. His jacket was soaked, not just with rain but darker, stickier. Blood. His jacket was faded and torn, the left sleeve nearly shredded. She couldn't see his face, just tangled dark hair and trembling hands clutched tight around something wrapped in cloth inside his coat. "I'm a nurse," she whispered, unsure if he was even conscious. "You're okay. You're safe. Just stay with me." She fumbled for her phone, trying to dial 911 with shaking fingers. That's when the shot rang out. A single crack, sharp and close. Something hot tore through the back of her thigh. Teresa screamed, collapsing beside the man. Pain lanced through her body. Her phone skittered across the pavement. She saw nothing, just swirling fog and the warehouse wall to her left. The shooter remained unseen, but the man stirred, barely. His lips moved, saying something she couldn't quite catch. His hand, still pressing that bundle against his chest, slowly reached for her. She couldn't let him die. She dragged herself forward, body screaming with pain, shielding him with her own. Another beat passed, then silence. Whoever had fired had vanished into the fog as quickly as they'd appeared. By the time the ambulance arrived, called by a trucker who heard her scream, only Teresa remained. Bleeding, shivering, confused. The man was gone. 2 hours later, Teresa sat in a hospital bed, her leg bandaged, her pain dulled by medication, but her mind razor sharp. "There was a man," she said for the 4th time to the deputy standing near the foot of her bed. "He was shot. He was bleeding out. I tried to protect him. I got shot doing it." The deputy flipped his notebook closed. "We've reviewed the area. No blood trail, no signs of a second person. Cameras were down. Your coworker mentioned you were exhausted. Might have imagined things." "I'm a trauma nurse," she snapped. "I don't imagine blood loss. He was real." "Maybe," he replied, unconvinced. But without evidence. Teresa lay awake long after they left, staring at the ceiling. Her leg throbbed. Her mind reeled. Someone had been there. Someone in danger. And now he was gone, along with whatever he'd been protecting under that coat. The image haunted her. That cloth bundle, gripped so tightly. His half-spoken words. The shot from the fog. She knew what she'd seen. She knew she didn't hallucinate the pain or the fear or the blood. But the world around her moved on. No investigation. No news report. Just silence. And somewhere out there, someone wanted her to stop asking questions. The hospital room smelled like antiseptic and cheap vinyl, and the walls were the color of wet paper. Teresa sat up slowly, wincing as her stitches pulled against bruised muscle. Her leg was elevated, wrapped tight and aching. The bullet had missed the bone, but not by much. According to the doctors, she was lucky. She didn't feel lucky. Her world had narrowed to the rhythmic beep of the monitor, the distant shuffle of nurses, and the echo of a gunshot that still rang in her memory every time the room fell silent. The official story was simple. A lone nurse injured near an abandoned warehouse. No cameras, no suspects, no second victim. Case closed. In this region, the mayor had a reputation for sweeping violence under the rug. But Teresa couldn't forget the weight of the man's blood on her hands, or the way he clutched something to his chest like it was more valuable than his life. She tried bringing it up again with the hospital staff, but they'd begun treating her like a trauma case. Kind, but dismissive. One nurse even gently asked if she'd ever experienced vivid hallucinations before. Teresa nearly threw a bedpan at her. That afternoon, the door creaked open, and a familiar voice broke the cycle. "Tell me you punched someone." "Benny," she exhaled, smiling for the first time in days. Benny Alvarez, 32, stood in the doorway in a crumpled hoodie and jeans, holding a styrofoam cup of gas station coffee in one hand and a plastic bag of snacks in the other. His dark curls were tied back, and his lanyard from the truck stop convenience store still hung around his neck. "Didn't know what flavor soup you like, so I brought 3, he said, setting the bag on her bedside table. "One has broccoli in it, I think. Sorry in advance." Teresa chuckled and reached out to squeeze his arm. "You didn't have to come. You got shot, Benny said, his voice suddenly serious. "Of course I did." He sat down in the plastic chair beside her, scanning her face. "You okay? Physically? I'll walk again. Mentally?" She shook her head. "They think I imagined it. The guy, the gun, all of it." Benny frowned. "Do you think you imagined it?" She stared at him. "No, he was real, and someone wanted him gone." Benny leaned back, chewing his lip. "What if this wasn't random? What if there's more going on here than we're supposed to know?" Over the next 2 days, Benny became her one-man investigation unit. On his night shifts at the convenience store, he chatted up truckers, especially the ones who came in after midnight. He asked casual questions about the warehouse district, about trouble on the road, about rumors. Most shrugged him off. One muttered something about ghost cargo before slipping out with a protein bar. Benny checked the gas station's camera footage, hoping one might have caught Teresa's car or the alley that night, but the angle didn't reach far enough. Still, he kept digging. Between shifts, he returned to the warehouse alley. The fog was gone, replaced by harsh sunlight and dry wind. No shell casings, no blood, just oil stains, broken glass, and silence. He followed a hunch and walked behind the clinic, toward the staff entrance used during night shifts. That's when he saw it. A small, torn scrap of paper, tucked just behind the corner of the door frame. It flapped slightly in the breeze. Someone had taped it at eye level, clearly meant to be found. Benny peeled it off and read the message, written in hurried, jagged ink. "The convoy is safe because of her." He didn't tell anyone yet. He walked straight into the hospital, through the front this time, and up to Teresa's floor. As he turned the last corner, he paused. A man in work boots and a camouflage jacket was leaning against the wall just past her room, arms crossed, staring out the window. Another man, older with a graying buzz cut, stood at the vending machine, not even pretending to pick a snack. His forearms were exposed, and Benny noticed the ink on both. Faded Marine Corps tattoos. They didn't look like hospital staff. They didn't even look like truckers. They looked like men who'd seen too much and said too little. Benny slipped past them and stepped into Teresa's room. "You're not going to believe this," he said, holding up the paper. She read it twice, her face paling. "That's not a coincidence." There's more, Benny added quietly. There are men outside your room, military types. They're not trying to be noticed, but they're watching. Watching me. I think they're protecting you. Later that night, just after visiting hours ended, the door creaked open again. A man entered, middle-aged, maybe in his 50s, with a grizzled beard, grease-stained mechanic's uniform, and a limp in his step. He didn't introduce himself. He didn't ask permission. He just stepped close to Teresa's bedside, leaned in, and in a low voice said, "He's alive." The cargo reached its destination. Then, just like that, he turned and walked out. Teresa stared at the empty doorway, heart hammering in her chest. "Did you hear that?" she asked Benny, who'd just returned with tea. "Hear what?" She told him every word. Benny didn't laugh, didn't doubt. He sat down slowly and stared at the note again. "Tea," he said, voice steady. "I think we just landed in the middle of something way bigger than we understand." She nodded, her pulse still racing. The hospital room felt different now. Not like a place of healing, but like the calm eye of a storm. He's alive. The cargo reached its destination. Someone out there was pulling strings. Someone knew what she had done, and they weren't going to forget it. Benny sat in his car just outside a weather-worn building. The sign above the door read, "Rusty Boots Veterans Bar and Grill." There were only 3 cars in the lot, all pickups, all coated in a thin layer of dust. He'd been driving past the place for years, but had never once stepped inside. He looked down at the paper in his hands, the same note that had been taped behind the hospital's staff door. He didn't know what he expected to find here. Just a hunch, a thread he couldn't stop pulling. Inside, the place smelled of wood polish, old grease, and bourbon. The lights were dim, the voices low. On the walls, military patches and black and white photos stared down like quiet sentries. A few older men sat scattered across booths and bar stools, nursing drinks, watching a muted TV that flickered with the glow of a football game no one cared about. Benny approached the bar, where a gruff man with a white beard and thick forearms wiped down a glass with a rag that looked older than the jukebox. "Looking for someone?" the man asked, not looking up. "Not exactly. I'm looking for answers." That earned him a glance. "We serve beer and silence. Answers are extra." Benny hesitated, then pulled the note from his pocket and slid it across the bar. The man read it. His expression didn't change, but he stopped wiping. After a pause, he nodded toward a booth in the back where a man sat alone with a deck of cards, laying them out face down like a game he never finished. "Talk to Curtis." Curtis looked up slowly when Benny approached. Late 60s, lean but not frail, with silver hair and eyes like glass marbles. Clear, unreadable. "You're not military," he said. "No," Benny admitted, sliding into the booth. "But my friend, she got shot helping someone who was. I think you know something about what's going on." Curtis studied him for a long time. Then he reached over, flipped a card. Queen of Spades. "You don't ask questions like that unless you've already seen something. So I'll say this once." He leaned forward. "You ever hear of the Freedom Convoys?" Benny shook his head. "Not the protests. Not the ones on the news. I'm talking about something older, quieter. A handful of men, Marines, Rangers, drivers who came back from war and found a different kind of battlefield waiting. Bureaucrats, contractors, private firms exploiting our own. Hooking veterans into predatory work, fake benefits, forced labor under the radar. Guys in debt, injured, told to shut up and keep hauling." Benny felt a chill creep down his spine. "So a few of us decided to fight back. Off the grid. When a vet had evidence, documents, recordings, sometimes even someone who wanted out, we moved them. Quietly, safely. No trails, no cell towers, just engines and trust." Curtis took a long sip from his glass. "The man your friend saved? That wasn't just a Marine. That was a courier. He was hauling a ledger, names, dates, shell company addresses. The kind of stuff people vanish over. And she stepped between him and a bullet." Benny swallowed hard. Why didn't anyone tell the police? Or the press? Because then the mission's blown. The operation's over. The men behind it clean house and go deeper underground. Your friend kept the mission alive. And because of that, people who exploit their own will get exposed. Curtis slid the Queen of Spades toward him. But the world doesn't get to hear about heroes like her. Not in headlines. Only here, he tapped his chest. And here, he tapped the card. That evening, the sky turned an oily gray as a summer storm rolled in. Thunder rumbled low like distant artillery as Teresa lay in her hospital bed, watching raindrops trail down the windowpane. Her leg ached less now. The staff still smiled at her kindly, but there was a different energy in the air lately. Strange visitors walking by, too many blank faces that didn't belong to patients. She knew Benny was onto something, but even he hadn't prepared her for what happened next. A firm knock, then the door opened. The man who stepped in moved with purpose, even though his boots were worn and his expression lined with time. Square shoulders, steel gray hair cropped short, a long tan coat with a Marine Corps pin on the collar. "Miss Williams," he said, "I'm Colonel Briggs." His presence filled the room like a sudden change in pressure. Teresa straightened, heart thudding. "You're military? Retired, and unofficial in this capacity." He walked to the foot of her bed. "You did something no one expected that night. You made a decision in a split second, and you saved more lives than you'll ever know." She stared at him. "The man I helped, he was part of something. Something dangerous." Colonel Briggs nodded. He was moving key evidence to expose a smuggling network targeting veterans. Fake benefit programs, black market labor, coercion. This has been happening under everyone's noses for years. The information he carried? Enough to blow it wide open. But the people running it have power, money, and no conscience. They were prepared to kill to keep it buried. "And the cargo?" she asked. "What was it?" "A sealed file," he said, "with names, locations, and a statement from someone who survived their system. And he's alive?" "He is, thanks to you. The mission wasn't compromised, but we couldn't make it public. Too many risks. Lives are still in danger." Teresa nodded slowly, absorbing it all. Colonel Briggs stepped forward and placed a small item on her bedside table. A dark cloth patch, stitched in faded gold thread. A winged wheel, a rifle, and below it a single phrase, "Semper Fi." "Those who know the truth won't forget what you did," he said. "And those who don't need to." Then, with a quiet nod, he left. When the door clicked shut, Teresa sat in silence. Outside, the storm broke, rain hammering the windows. She turned the patch over in her hands, the threads rough against her fingers. She thought of the man in the warehouse, of the bullet, of the eyes watching her now, not with suspicion, but with gratitude unspoken. Whatever war had found its way into her life, she hadn't run from it. She had stepped forward, and someone had been saved. The morning Teresa was discharged. The sky hung low with thick, gray clouds, the kind of morning that feels like the world is holding its breath. She stood at the clinic entrance, a paper bag of belongings tucked under one arm, the other gripping a simple metal cane. Her left leg, though stronger now, still trembled with each step. Benny walked beside her, unusually quiet. He carried her duffel and glanced over his shoulder once, as if sensing something he couldn't explain. The staff had said their polite goodbyes, smiles, nods, a signature here and there. But beneath their professionalism, Teresa still felt the chill of disbelief in their eyes, the unspoken doubt that had followed her since that first night. She didn't blame them anymore. Some truths simply weren't meant for records. She stepped outside and froze. Lined up in absolute silence across the far end of the clinic parking lot were 12 trucks. Full-sized rigs, long haulers, weathered and proud, parked with military precision. Each one was different colors, different makes, but they stood as one, shoulder to shoulder like soldiers on a final watch. And in front of each truck stood a man. 12 of them, at attention, wearing jeans, work boots, flannel, and canvas jackets. To a stranger, they looked like any other truckers. But to Teresa, there was no mistaking it. Their posture, their bearing, their silence. the tattoos on their arms, peeking out from rolled sleeves, unit numbers, flags, marine insignias, some so faded they looked like ghosts from another life. The wind stirred, catching the loose hem of her coat. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. Benny whispered, "Teresa." The driver from the center truck stepped forward. Broad shoulders, hard jaw, a clean-shaven face with storm-gray eyes. Sergeant stripes inked on his forearm, old but sharp. His work shirt was buttoned to the collar, grease-stained at the sleeves. He stopped a few feet from her, said nothing at first. Then, with a firm but quiet voice, "You didn't just save a man. You kept our brother's sacrifices from being dishonored." She tried to speak, but nothing came out. Only the sound of distant wind and the quiet idling of a diesel engine. Behind Sergeant Cole, the 12 men raised their hands. Not in a dramatic salute, but a quiet one. Low, steady, eyes fixed on her. It lasted only a moment. And then, without a word, they turned as one, climbed into their trucks, and one by one, started their engines. The deep hum of diesel filled the air like a heartbeat returning to the earth. No sirens, no applause, just the sound of 12 rigs rolling out of the lot and disappearing down the highway. Later, as Teresa sat with Benny on a bench near the edge of the clinic's lawn, she still held the patch Colonel Briggs had given her. She traced the threads with her fingers, gently, like a child afraid of breaking something sacred. Benny looked over. "You okay?" She nodded slowly. "My dad used to say something." Benny waited. "Courage hides in plain sight." He nodded. "Feels like that's exactly what just happened." Neither of them said anything for a while. No one else had seen what they saw. The nurses had returned to their rounds. A couple of orderlies were on break, smoking and laughing by the loading dock, unaware of the honor guard that had just come and gone like a passing storm. No camera caught it. No headlines would cover it. But Teresa didn't need that. The man she helped was alive. The cargo had made it. And now she knew. Sometimes the people who protect the world the most are the ones it never sees. She looked down at the patch again. "Semper Fi," she whispered, not as a veteran or as a soldier, but as someone who had stood up when it mattered most, and had been quietly, permanently welcomed into a brotherhood she would never fully understand, but would always respect. And for her, that was enough. This story reminds us that real courage doesn't wear a uniform. It acts when no one's watching. If you were Teresa, would you have stopped to help a stranger that night? Tell us in the comments. Where are you watching us from? If this story moved you, please leave it a like, share, and subscribe to embrace the journey for more powerful tales of quiet heroes. See you in the next video.